Hello YouTube, Jeremy here. It is February 26th at 2:41 p.m. If you hear a whirring, that's just my little fan turned on. Supposed to be in the mid 80s today in Florida, well, my part of Florida anyway. And I don't want to use the air conditioning. So this is not really a video response, more of a ramble/rant. And what prompted me is the video that Gridley posted yesterday. The anti-social social hour he had. Good video. I'll try and put his link in the description. And what was said in the beginning, now I did watch the whole video, so 12 minutes into the video I was triggered. And what triggered me was the talk about AR-15. Now, previous video he covered the AR-15, but he clarified and talked about it again. Of course, mentioned the shooting that took place at the school in Florida. And everybody is fighting to keep an AR-15, make sure they can still buy an AR-15. That's, I think, part of the problem. See, everybody is quick to say, I need a gun. You're trying to take away my right to own a gun. Too much of the concern is on owning a gun. Now, with owning a gun, you have to have ammo, both of which, if you plan on, say everything goes haywire and you have to stay in your house, well, odds are you were out buying ammo. So you have 40,000 rounds of ammo and didn't have enough money to buy food. So what are you going to do? Well, you're going to use the ammo to hunt, which will, of course, create noise. It'll draw attention to you, letting other people know that you have a gun. They may not, and they may want the gun you have. Or they do have a gun, but yours sounds more powerful, so you may be seen as a threat. So now the person with a few high-end pistols or 12 gauge gets together with all of his friends of the same gun type or ammo type, and now there's 6 or 7 people after this one person with the rifle. There is far too much concern on whether to own, not own, ban, not ban firearms. No one is concerned about skills they might need. Say, same scenario, everything goes wrong, you're staying at home, but now you don't have power. Okay, well, you do have some canned goods because you did have some food, or you did have money left to buy food because you didn't have firearms and buying ammo. So now you have canned goods. However, eating cold canned goods will get rather mundane and lower the morale. So, say the person knows how to make a small wood-burning stove with soup cans and things like that. As you've seen, I learned how to do. So now they can heat up some food, or maybe heat up a soup that they can add to some kind of meat that they had leftovers of, say, in the fridge. Of course, the fridge isn't going to be running, but it hasn't gone bad yet. So you can make something like a stew or something like that. There are a lot of skills that people do not know. So, and these skills normally are not taught. Not in school, not in a vocational school. They're only taught in places like Boy and Girl Scouts and those situations. Now, say by chance you're spotted, you're now a target. Well, then you need to gather what you can and know what needs to be grabbed, what is priority to grab. What are you going to need to do? You're going to need a fire to not only cook, but possibly boil water, possibly make medical supplies. You can do all kinds of things with fire. So you need to be able to make a fire. You need to be able to harvest the wood, which is cut and process the wood to start the fire. So you need a knife, a small hatchet or axe, saw things like that. Fire starting, you need to know the basics that the primitive world might have known. How to use a flint steel, how to use cell rod. Not necessarily in modern times you don't need that, but you can grab a pocket full of matches or a handful of lighters, things like that. Put those aside so that way you have them in case you need them. And part of what prompted me to want to make a video about all of this, which the majority of people know, is that I came across a video on YouTube of the wrestler Roddy Piper talking about the movie he was in 1988, John Carpenter's They Live. And at the time that movie was made, it was made about Reagan, the Reaganism that was going on with consumers and well, I'll put the link to that video down in the description as well if I can remember. However, it made me think about how much was going on in that movie in 1988 that is still going on today. The resistance groups created sunglasses where you could see the subliminal messages that were essentially keeping people in control. And one scene in the movie, he puts on the sunglasses and walks around the city, and there's billboards that say obey, consume, sleep, things like that. He'd take off the sunglasses and obey would turn into an ad for computers. Now, on the surface of watching a movie, you'd think, okay, well, computers, yeah, they do obey. They obey the person that uses it. So that makes sense. But in today's society, how many people do whatever social media says to do? They take their cues on how to lead relationships from things like Cosmopolitan, self-help books, even inspirational speakers. Now in the movie, this alien group that was behind all of these subliminal messages, they were all people in power. people in Congress, people that were CEOs that had a lot of money, influence, and that's not different from today's day and age. If you look at the news, and I don't have a TV in my apartment. I don't watch TV. I don't read the newspaper. But I do occasionally look at the headlines that show up when I go online. So one of the things I saw was that Trump wanted to arm teachers, and he did I forget if it was an interview, it was some kind of video, but it was him talking about why he wanted to have teachers carry weapons. And he said that it would make schools a hard target instead of a soft target. Get rid of gun-free zones so that way schools could be prepared if a gunman came into the school and 5 of the 20 teachers had a firearm. It wouldn't be one person and nobody else with a firearm. It would be he'd be outnumbered. Now, normally, as many of you know, I don't talk about politics. I don't talk about things like this because that's one of the easiest ways to get into a confrontation. However, there have been a lot of people that say that Trump will bring the end of the world, or the fall of what we know of as the world. Now, if he wants teachers, and in this he named off ex-Marines, making them teachers. So the people that had the guns were trained in it, they were comfortable with it, and they'd be more skilled with the weapon. Okay, so you're going to give veterans weapons to protect schools, but what about the veterans that are homeless, that aren't able to see their children because of being homeless and being seen as an unfit parent? Why don't you just help veterans in general? It is a statistical fact, and I actually had to research this for my college work. I believe it was a year or two ago, that the homeless population, I think at the time I researched this, was 35% of the veterans were male, and they were the homeless population. That's a lot of them. Now there are some women veterans that are homeless as well, but as many of us may have seen, women tend to have an easier time to get assistance than men do. Women are seen as mothers, or they may be mothers, so they may be in a situation where they have a child and they get taken in because of the child. So they're getting assistance, but mostly it's being done to keep the child healthy. Or they take in the woman because they're seen as the weaker element. They're not able to withstand the cold or withstand the exposure to hunger, to dehydration. And the reason I mention homelessness is because in the movie They Live, that is the group that isn't controlled, that not only are they not controlled, but there isn't a way to control them. So the alien or the people against them basically try to eradicate them. Now, this is done because they won't conform, they won't consume, they basically are awake and will not let the powers that be do what they want to do. And that could very well be the same with many of us here in the YTBC. I know there are many that are in Florida, and Florida has a anti-tobacco policy where they do make it difficult for not only cigarette smokers, raising the tax on that, but also pipe smoking and cigar smoking. For pipe smokers, unless you live in a big city like Jacksonville or Orlando, or I believe Gainesville, Miami, big metropolitan cities, you typically have to order your pipe tobacco online because there isn't gas stations that normally sell pipe tobacco. or you can't walk into a drugstore like you used to be able to. CVS no longer carries any tobacco, and Walgreens tends to not carry a large selection. There are grocery stores, of course, that you might be able to find something, or just what's considered a discount smoke shop, where you might be able to find something, but it'll be few and far between. So even as a pipe smoker, you have to conform at times. Excuse me, get a sip of coffee here. Now, with the obey and consume and things like that, with the subliminal messages, part of the reason that I stopped watching TV or wanting to even own a TV, the newspaper and things like that, is every time I turned it on, there was something negative. This many killed in a bombing, this place, so-and-so murdered so-and-so with this, or so-and-so killed family of, you get the idea. And then, not too long after seeing that, you would see a new bill passed for domestic violence, or you would see, like for example, last night I signed online, and one of the headlines said something about UK bombing, 4 people dead. Police say that they don't find it to be linked with terrorism. So what that means is that the media is trying to make the public suspicious of each other. Well, it's not terrorists. It might be Joe down the street. Or, Bob mentioned something about not liking this kind of person. So it makes you suspicious. There's an old saying that said, it's not paranoia if they're really out to get you. Of course, how do you prove they're out to get you? Another interesting scene. Now, mind you, They Live, as I said, was made in 1988. There's a scene where Roddy Piper is walking down the alleyway, and there's a little robotic drone that flies in, and out of the top of it comes a little telescoping camera. Now, and starts recording him. How many of us in modern times, meaning could be a couple of years, could be last week, how many of us have seen a drone? They've become rather popular. You may in fact own one. We do know that GPS is transmitted through cell phones, so whenever you have it turned on, they can find you, find out where you are, what your current location is, where you've been. Who's to say that they don't have that same ability to put in drones? So you may have a drone to record your family at the park, right? Or having a family reunion, for example. Or you're recording a wedding. And to give a different perspective, you have a drone. So you're recording that. While you're recording that, they could be recording that as well. Watching where exactly that's taking place, having facial recognition on whoever comes into focus so they can run background checks on, or might just be security checks to see if they could possibly pose a threat. As I've said before, I am not a prepper, and of course I have no experience with any of this. I don't have conspiracy theories, but I am not asleep either. I have become aware of the possibility that we are not as safe as the world wants us to think. I don't know if the moon landing is real or not. The 9/11 bombings, I don't know if the U.S. orchestrated that or played a part in it or what it was. I do know that several people died because of it needlessly, just as with the most current school shooting, children died needlessly. I remember, I believe it was 94, when the Oklahoma City bombing happened. when Timothy McVeigh went in and blew up that daycare. I remember watching that live on TV and thinking it was a movie, because the news normally didn't show raw video footage. It wasn't until I was in the Navy and went overseas that I saw the news from overseas. And Peru, South America in general, they have the same type of news coverage. They don't censor their violence. And I think showing that gritty, gruesome violence is a way of keeping the public aware. See, we have, as Americans, sorry, I'm watching the blackbirds fly past my window, and it's rather interesting. But as Americans, we have a way of censoring everything. We censor music, television, we censor movies, we censor the freedom of speech. It's only freedom of speech if certain people don't get offended. Well, how is the truth going to be puppies and roses all the time? Eventually, someone will get offended. And I feel that it's the same with the news. They censored a lot of Vietnam War, to where what they were showing, they did show live footage of the war happening, but they also showed the softer side of it, to where people wouldn't get upset because the live uncensored version was causing more riots, more anti-war propaganda and things like that. So if everybody is wanting to censor everything, nobody can see the truth, and nobody can get angry enough to do something to stop the further growth of the awakening, if you will. I believe, well, this is 39 minutes, so yeah, I believe that this has gone on long enough. If you're still watching, I am surprised as well as grateful. A lot of the times when I make my videos, I think it's mostly just so I can talk to myself and have an excuse for it. But this is a way of saying that I am aware now. I do have some kind of idea of what to do, of how to be ready. Granted, as far as security goes, I have no firearms, no hatchet. I do have 2 peen hammers and a small pickaxe, but that's about it. Some knives that I'd be able to use. But yeah. So, I may do a couple other videos, responses to different giveaways that are going on, both ending, I believe, in March, the end of March, for PG-13 and Cup of the Shire. So until then, I hope all you all are well, and you all have the tobacco of your choice. Take care.